Hello, everybody, and welcome to another day of Live at the Waterhole. My name is Taylor McCurdy, and I'll be the voice you'll be hearing for the next 2 hours. For those of you that have only just joined us for the first time, welcome. This is a live and interactive show, and I'm so looking forward to chatting to you. And if you would like to send me any questions, or if you have any comments, questions are better though, all you have to do is comment away on YouTube on the live chat, or you can also use X, or if you still call it Twitter. Just remember to hashtag WildEarth at the end of your questions. Otherwise, we won't be able to see them. But we're starting off the show at Victoria Falls Safari Lodge, which is in Zimbabwe. And as you can see, there are lots and lots and lots of vultures all around, just waiting patiently in the shade because feeding time is about to commence. Doesn't that sound like there's dinosaurs or something that are about to appear from the bushes? But no, not kind of Jurassic Park, but one of the specials that they have at Victoria Falls Safari Lodge is they have a vulture feeding station. So some of you probably never even heard of a vulture feeding station before. But what does happen occasionally is some areas will help the vultures and put out scraps of meat for them to then feed on. And from my understanding, I've never been to Victoria Falls Safari Lodge, but the food actually comes from the offcuts of meats from the restaurant that services the lodge itself. So we'll probably see somebody walk down soon and then throw out the scraps of meat. And these will all be raw bits of meat. There's no cooked stuff involved here, which is really, really interesting. So we'll just hang tight for just a moment. I want to see how many of you are actually watching, and we'll just get the comments going, and then I'll go into a little bit more about vultures and why having vulture feeding stations are necessary. Can even just see a few more vultures flying in. I'm sure they know that something is up. But before I get into all the hellos and that type of thing, let's quickly go and check out what the weather is going to be at the various locations. So there we go, nice warm conditions all around. Also, sorry if you're wondering why I sound a little bit strange. I've been sick with some kind of a chest infection. Yesterday I didn't have much of a voice, but at least it is back today. Just in time. But I see that Darcy Miller, you've said hello Taylor, and Tucker. Tucker's my dog. He's very unimpressed with me right now because he's not gone for a walk yet today, so I'll have to do that after the show. Catherine, you've also jumped on. You've said hello, Taylor. So it's so great to hear from all of you. I'm also just going to keep an eye out on the YouTube chat too. We've got Troy Stoker. Ants has also jumped on and said hello. We've got Janine. And yeah, there we go. A couple of you. Wonderful. Awesome. Welcome, welcome. Here we go. Here's the man. This is the best friend of all the vultures. I don't know if I would like this job. For those of you that don't have a strong stomach, you can imagine this would probably be your worst nightmare, right? So everything is brought out, as you can see, in a container. And it looks like, oh my goodness, look at all the poor vultures descending on this gentleman. That is insane. That is crazy. Look at them all coming in from every corner of your screen. And what's sad is that you can't really hear their wings flapping. They make such a noise. Oh goodness, one vulture just crash landed. But that's also about right. You can see it's difficult to see. It looks like he's just unpackaging packets. That's obviously where the meat is, and making sure he takes away all the plastic with him, just leaving behind the meat. You can see it's not an obscene amount of food. This does happen every single day at 1 o'clock. And now he's gonna quickly get out of there before. Oh my goodness. And vultures can be so clumsy when they fly. Be careful that one doesn't fly into you. Look at this frenzy. Right, so there's a whole host of vulture species here. Again, it's tricky to see, but I imagine that there's lots of hooded. I can see some white-backed vultures. I can even see kind of marabou stork over there. There's upper marabou storks around. There most certainly will be lappet-faced vultures here. And if we're really lucky, we can keep an eye out and try and spot a white-headed vulture, but we are a bit of a distance away, so it's not easy. But you can see them all scrapping right now, just in front of us, all desperately trying to get a little piece of flesh. And then Lynn Murray, you've just said that there's a brand new vulture feeding station that's opened in the Berg, or in the Berg, in KwaZulu-Natal, so that's the east coast of South Africa. That's awesome. That is great. And Darcy Miller, this is your first time seeing a vulture feeding station. You can see it's going to be a frenzy, but it's not going to last for very long. I mean, vultures can decimate an entire buffalo carcass literally, I don't know, in under an hour. If there were this many, they'd eat it so quickly and just leave the skin and basically the shell of the carcass. It's unbelievable how they're able to do that. Look at the big marabou storks as well, flying over. They don't seem to want to get into the mix of the chaos. So, of course, these vultures are very capable of flying, and they can go off in search of food of their own. But of course, if there are little scraps that are placed for them, they're going to choose that. But there's not enough food here that would sustain them permanently. And then once bitten, you've said, hi Taylor and Tucker, how many vultures use this feeding station? That's a great question. I'm actually not entirely sure. I honestly didn't know too much about the Victoria Falls Safari Lodge, but Africam obviously has introduced it to me. And I'm so eager to go and visit this camp because you've obviously got this vulture feeding station, which is amazing. And then they also have a beautiful waterhole right out front of the camp. And there's a crocodile in there that is insane. It likes to chase after elephants. It's quite comical, in fact. Sometimes doesn't end well for the crocodile, but anyways. So I'm not sure how many species of vultures are here, or at least, how many individuals will come here at one point. I mean, I'm just trying to look and guess. I don't know. There must be like 60 or 70 individuals here, maybe even a little bit more. I can't really see where there are others sitting. But you'll see they'll come in, they'll eat, and then they'll kind of move off again. They might even then take to the skies and go and look for something else to eat. But I'm not against vulture feeding stations. I am against, of course, obviously feeding wild animals food. But the reason why I'm not so against something like this is that unfortunately all vulture species are threatened. Not even just vultures in Africa, vultures all over the world. They've declined. I think I read a stat not too long ago. In fact, over 90% of vulture species have declined, numbers have declined in the last 50 years, which is a horrific statistic. Power lines play a big role in killing vultures. Poisoning of carcasses is another one. So these are all man-made reasons as to why vultures are not surviving. And then something else that causes huge effect, again, not just in Africa, but also all over the world, is a pesticide known as DDT. Some of you may know it. It's banned for the most part in most of the world. And it was banned in South Africa too. But they still do use it in areas where there are malaria. Apparently it's a very low dosage, but you never know. But you're not allowed to use it on crops and anything like that because of the effects of it. So animals in their environments will feed on plant matter, and for example, say if DDT has been sprayed, next minute that animal dies, vulture then starts to feed on it, other animals will eat it and also die. But what happens with the vultures is that they don't die, but it affects the way that they metabolize calcium, essentially. And we all know why calcium is important for birds, right? Especially for females that need to lay eggs. And what this does is that it causes the thinning of the eggshell. So the vultures will still reproduce and they'll lay eggs, but when it comes to incubation and the birds being quite large, those eggs crack or pop really easily. So that caused massive effects. And I can just talk from experience from where I live in South Africa, from where I used to live in the Eastern Cape. It's a really, really big problem and most of the Cape vultures went locally extinct. So it's very sad, but I know that there are big projects underway to try and bring Cape vultures back to those areas, and largely it was because of DDT. But again, vultures are also, used in traditional medicine, so it's just nothing seems to be safe on this planet, hey, when there's humans around. But at least good people that are really, really trying to change that and be the voice of the animals and the wild spaces that they live in. So the vultures all scrambled for the shade. But if you just think about the offcuts from a restaurant and how much, they're actually throwing away, it's not that much. And it's every single day. So it's a great way to, of course, dispose of organic matter. And that's the role of vultures, right? The cleanup crew for the bush. They're that's a great tongue tie for this morning. They are hugely important to the environment, as most of you know. Without them, we'd be in a lot of trouble. There'd definitely be more zoonotic diseases around. So these are diseases that can be spread from animals to people and vice versa. So without vultures, we would, live in a very different world. So I'm quite thankful for them. They're also so fascinating. Something that I highly recommend doing if you have the opportunity to go on a safari, or maybe you just keep watching this camera all the time. That's obviously also another idea, is watching the hierarchy between vultures at a carcass. And this actually is a question from Catherine. Catherine has said, is there hierarchy amongst the different vulture species? So absolutely. It's so interesting though. We always talk about size does matter when you're out in the bush, right? We look at an elephant. There's not much that messes with an elephant, except this crocodile here that lives in a small hole, which I'm sure we'll have a look at some point. But the bigger you are, the kind of more status you have. And this goes with vultures too, but for a number of different reasons. Not just, let's use a leopard-faced vulture, right? They're really big, and everybody demands their respect, but they've also got big, powerful beaks. We look at something like a hooded vulture, which will most likely make up quite a few of the vultures that we've been seeing. They've got much smaller wings, they're much smaller in stature, just in general, and their beaks are not very robust at all. But those beaks are good for getting out eyeballs, and I'm going to be it might seem a bit gruesome, but not really, because it's just how these animals eat and feed. And any of the softer tissue, so, sort of around the nether regions, it's very easy for a hooded vulture to tuck into those. But if there's no one else around, no white-backed vultures around, for an example, the hooded vultures are going to be in trouble. They're not going to be able to break open the tough hide of a buffalo, for an example. So then you get these birds of vultures that have got much more robust beaks that will come in and actually open up carcasses. So we don't always see lots of leopard-faced vultures. It really just depends where you go. Like if you go up into East Africa, you tend to see quite a few leopard-faced vultures in comparison to in South Africa. And so the white-backed vultures, and then even the rupal vultures, again in East Africa, you'll see doing a lot of the work of opening up carcasses if something else hasn't, like a lion or hyena or something along those lines. And then, then the scrapping starts. Like, I was surprised that there was very little vocalization, because that is insane to hear. It's what I think we all imagine dinosaurs to sound like, and it's quite comical too. So the hooded vultures, they'll try and get in there, but you'll normally see them just lingering around on the outskirts, and then you'll have the biggest species of vultures competing for the carcass, and they jump and kick one another, they bite and pull wings. It's amazing to see. There's nothing peaceful about the frenzy of vultures at a carcass. So it's really quite funny to watch. I highly recommend it. I had guests once who were in Tanzania I was on a private safari a few years ago, and we managed to spot these cheetah. The guide and I, we saw something moving in the grass, and then it disappeared, and then the next minute I saw this tail, and I was like, cheetah. So as we were driving there, we stopped, and all these other vehicles were racing past us to go to some other sighting, and they drove past the cheetah, but they were in the long grass. So we waited for everyone to go past, and then we spent the morning with these two male cheetah, and they killed a Thompson's gazelle. Anyways, they had their fill, and they moved off, and they were moving into an area where they were going to sit on termite mounds. And I said to my guests, I was like, I highly recommend that we sit here and we watch the vultures, that we've been waiting patiently. So they were like, okay, let's do it. And everyone else followed the cheetah and left us once again all alone. And we must have spent 45 minutes watching the vultures scrap over the tiniest little gazelle you've ever seen. Thompson's gazelle, they're so small, nowhere near the size of an impala. So it was really quite entertaining, and they loved it. They didn't understand, that there was such a hierarchy between vultures, but then just the antics, that you get to witness. So just because they're birds, I know not everybody likes birding. If you see vultures and they are scavenging around the carcass, or if they're waiting patiently for their turn, it's really worth the wait. So do it. And if you want to see what I'm talking about, I'm pretty sure you could go onto YouTube and just type in vultures feeding on carcass, and you'll see exactly what I mean. You'll get an understanding for the sounds, and then you won't have to worry about the smells either. And then Lady Macbeth, you said that you need a lappet-faced vulture to open a carcass. That's actually not true. That's sure. I hear that a lot, and of people talking about that, but that's actually not the case at all. Sorry, I had a moment. I saw something slinking through the grass outside, and I thought, but it's just there's a few guinea fowl moving. So white-headed, hooded, white-headed, leopard-faced, and white-backed vultures in South Africa are all more than capable of opening up carcasses. They've got robust beaks. Hooded vultures are the ones that are not going to be able to tear open a buffalo carcass. That's not going to work. But they'll start feeding, like I said, around the eyes, around the mouth, and then around the nether regions, typically underneath the tail, and any other soft tissue like that. So yeah, I mean, I've seen crazy animals feeding on carcasses. I mean, southern ground hornbills, sure, big scavengers. I mean, here we've got the marabou storks as well. I don't know if they'd necessarily be able to open up a carcass. I mean, they've got really big beaks. They could probably smash their beaks straight through the hide. But they're not normally responsible for opening carcasses and things like that. That was an amazing sight to see, though. I hope you enjoyed that. And this is something that you've got to look forward to every Live at the Waterhole show at 1 o'clock. And who knows, maybe there'll be an influx in guests, which means more offcuts of meat. And the frenzy will just last for even longer. Okay. But we'll come back here if there's any more action. But for now, we're going to head down to South Africa and check out Tau Lodge. Wow. This is a wonderful scene. So we're now at Madikwe Game Reserve in South Africa. And we've got wildebeest and we've got 2 beautiful kudu bulls. But look at these 2 bulls. You can clearly see the size difference. So I mentioned it before. Quite often we look at kudu and we're like, oh wow, they're super impressive. That kudu on the right hand side, his neck is so much thicker than the individual on the left. And for me, that's what I look at. It's one thing having a beautiful big splay of horns, right? But when you're coming to breeding season, we always see it where the male animals are just, in their prime condition. Their coats are nice and shiny. Their bellies are full. The muscles are at their absolute maximum. And that kudu on the right, that is a dominant breeding bull. He is spectacular. Look at them. His muscles are popping right off of his shoulder, all the way down his hindquarters. You can see the definition there. And you can also just see how they absolutely dwarf wildebeest. I know there's a bit of an optical illusion with the wildebeest being much closer to the camera, but the size difference is that dramatic. I've been seeing lots of kudu as well in the estate that I live in. Plenty of bulls around at the moment. we've got a small group of elephants that have come down to have a drink now. In the ever-drying pan. Doesn't look like there's much water left at all. And I'm wondering if they're going to consider pumping it more frequently, or what the story is. But it's looking rather sad. Although the clouds, as you can see, it's not particularly sunny. It's quite overcast. And I'm going to open my weather app because I want to just see if we are going to get any more rain at some point. So what I do is I look for any big weather systems forming between Madagascar and Mozambique. And that's what we need. We need some big cyclones to come from that side and then kind of into Mozambique, and then for the most part they normally fall down over, they go into Zimbabwe, they even go into Botswana and come into South Africa, and that's when we can get some big rain. But it doesn't look like it just yet. Lucy, you said Madikwe is a reserve filled with wonderful extremes. I completely agree. Still itching to get there. At some point I will. I don't know when though, but it will happen. And Lucy, maybe you and I should go visit it together. Wouldn't that be fun? And then Canine Girl, hello. You said the scene with all the different animals is really stunning. It is. It's nice to see animals all interacting around a common point. And it's just going to get busier and busier and busier. We haven't even hit winter yet, and it's already dry as a bone. So the water holes are going to be really good this year. I do hope, though, that this means we're going to start to get more predator action around the existing water holes, as this is where the animals are just going to start hanging around. Cooksters, you said maybe some rain relief, a little something. So I obviously can't speak for what's going on in Madikwe, but just here in the Lowveld, in the Limpopo province, in Hoedspruit specifically, it's really, really dry. We've not had enough rain. We've had a couple of days where it's sprinkled, but really not enough to even turn the grass, a different shade of brown. That's how bad it is. And I walk pretty much every single day in this estate that I live in, and we don't even have any big mega herbivores. There's no elephants here, there's no buffalo. We have giraffe and we have zebra, but the populations are quite low. It's obviously a fenced estate. It's a housing estate. People like to live here. Well, not like to live here, we do live here. And with there being so few animals, the grass is almost gone, which is insane. The grass gets so tall in this area. That's why we don't often do a lot of bushwalks during the summer months, because sometimes the grass is taller than your head when we've had good years of rain. And now the grass is probably at knee height and decreasing rapidly, which is really sad. So these areas that have got high density of these mega herbivores, these bulk grazers that just feed and feed and feed, they really are going to take a knock. I'd love to, I haven't actually been watching the drives, the live safaris, but I should go back and watch, because I'd love to see what the Sabi Sand is looking like at the moment. I'll be back on a safari in June, and I think there's going to be nothing left. I think it's going to be pretty good game viewing though. And then I'll be at Ngala on the weekend, next weekend. So we'll see what the bush looks like there too, but not expecting too much in terms of greenery. And then Lady Macbeth, you've said that it's interesting because in Cape has been more rain than usual. Yeah, KZN has had some good rain for the last few years, since the sort of break of the big drought. Was it going into 2019? We had some really, was it 2019? Yeah, 2019, the beginning of the year was good rain. And then 2019 going into 2020, which was even better. We had those big cyclones. And then Liverpool Bird, you said, are there crocodiles at this waterhole? you're going to think I'm talking absolute nonsense, but yes, there are, and there are normally plenty. However, with the water, what's wrong with me now? Receding. I don't know where the crocs have gone. I mean, crocodiles are also really amazing. They can also estivate, so they can just, go completely dormant in some mud somewhere if they really want to. That's obviously the advantage that reptiles have. So they're probably lurking here in and amongst this greenery, all the grasses and all these channels. The channels are deceiving. They're a lot deeper than you think they would be, because the elephants have typically been walking through there. You can see how the mud has been stirred up. So they've created fairly deep channels. So there are crocs. This is where we typically have our best crocodile sightings. But I'm not sure if some of them have moved off. Crocodiles will move. If there's a shortage of food in a particular area, there's just too much competition, or the water is receding, they have to make alternative plans. And I saw this crazy video, I think it went viral on social media not too long ago, of a monster crocodile. Yeah, it was so big. It's amazing just to see how big these crocs can get, and especially when they're out on land. And it was people, I think it was in the Kudu National Park, and this crocodile went underneath someone's car. I don't think they were near water. It was on the road. This crocodile just thought, this is the route I'm going, underneath the person's car, and then walked out onto the road. It's spectacular. You should probably find it. You can find it somewhere. So we'll see if we can find any crocodiles. But I don't know where the next closest waterhole is to this one. Not that they would affect a crocodile. Crocodiles can travel huge distances on land. They might then go tuck themselves under a bush, rest a little bit, and then continue at another point. And for the most part, you see crocodiles moving around at night time, rather than necessarily moving around during the day when it's very hot. And then Peter, you've wondered if we have any cats here. So Madikwe is home to a variety of big cat species. Leopards are quite elusive, but they are around. Lions will be the most prominent big cats, and then of course they have cheetah as well. We've seen lions, I've seen lions who are on basically right at the back on the tree line, just hanging about. We didn't really get a great view of them, so they do come through here. And that's why I was saying, Peter, with the way that this year is going, the fact that we are about to enter an extremely dry spell, we don't have much time left. It's kind of April is really the cutoff in South Africa for decent rain. If we don't get any big rain now, then we're going to go into a very dry year. And I've looked at the predictions and the forecasts, and it says that for the most part of the northern parts of South Africa, central and northern and eastern parts of South Africa, it's going to be an exceptionally dry year. Oh, and then Diane from the UK, you've just messaged and said that the crocodiles were here yesterday. Yeah, so they're probably just lurking in the water somewhere. But again, when there just gets too much competition, they're going to have to move. And everyone's just taking a moment. The elephants also just relaxing, not up to too much. But taking care of business. You said that you read somewhere that crocodiles can go 2 years without eating. Sure, that's a very long time for a crocodile to go without food. There's this old wives' tale that crocodiles, that you hear it all the time. Crocodiles only need to eat once a year. This is also not true. I'm pretty sure that stems from the migration, the massive movements of wildebeest, zebra, and a bunch of other animals that happens between Tanzania and Kenya specifically, where it's crazy to see. You go outside, you go in summer, you look at the crocodiles, and they're like, oh, they're big crocs. And as soon as the migration arrives, say in Kenya and around the banks of the Mara River, for argument's sake, in June, by the end of June, beginning of July, those crocodiles have doubled in width. It's insane. It's just crazy. So they gorge themselves because there's the opportunity. But crocodiles will eat whenever there's an opportunity. They don't have to have a big meal. They catch lots of fish. They eat birds. They'll eat anything, terrapins. Eat all these little small bits of sustenance, keep them going. They don't need to have large meals all the time because they're reptiles. and they need the sun, they need warm ground or rocks to help regulate their body temperatures, which also means that they can slow their metabolisms right down and not use as much energy as, say, something like a lion or an elephant or a wildebeest, for that matter of fact. Here comes the elephant bull. I was wondering when we were going to get one strutting into the scene, but here we are. No one seems particularly interested in him at the moment, though. You can see none of that cow with her trunk on her forehead is not really paying him too much attention. Kind of just walking away from him. But he's reaching his trunk over to have a sniff. He'll be able to pick up all sorts of information: her age, her reproductive status. There we go. He obviously got the answer that he wanted, and now he's going to carry on. And then dark mane lover, you're wondering if Madikwe gets any fires caused by the extreme heat. I'm sure Madikwe gets fires, but like with every game reserve or national park, especially these private reserves that have got a fence around them, management is quite good, so they will probably have all sorts of things in place, or procedures in place, to help kind of combat fires. I can't really speak on behalf of the reserve because I've never worked there before, so I don't really know the ins and outs of it. But yes, fires can be caused for a number of different reasons. One of the biggest ones for us in summer in these areas is lightning. Causes a lot of fires. The other thing that's really, really sad is people making fires in conditions when they should not been, and then leaving them unattended. Cigarette butts being thrown out the window. Oh my goodness, I'll never forget Pridelands once. It was a couple of years ago. It was really interesting. We were all down in camp, and as you know, on reserves and stuff, there's often a lot of people coming in and out, whether they're coming to do maintenance or dropping food order, whatever. The list is endless as to why people are moving around on reserves. And a particular person was driving in to come and do something, and anyways, somebody else drove in and they spotted a ball of elephant dung that was smoldering, and it was from a cigarette, which is crazy. So I actually had to go out and just make sure that I put it out properly and that type of thing. But something as small as that, thank goodness someone else drove in and saw it, otherwise that could have caused a big problem. So it's kind of risky business being out in the reserve. They can only control so much, and if a fire starts in that perimeter of the reserve, then the best they can do is just to try and I suppose put it out. But there'll probably be fire breaks. So a fire break is normally an area that has been cleared of vegetation. It's not typically that wide. Think of a single lane of a road, and then it will be dragged. So ideally it almost needs to be like sand, nothing that can burn, that can try and stop the fire. Of course, if it's a big fire, the flames can jump straight over that. I mean, you watch flames jumping over double lane highways, which is crazy. And if you don't believe me, go and check out some of the big fires in Australia and even in the States and around California. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But there's not going to be too much to burn if we don't have any rain. There's also a waterbuck bull just moving through all the animals at the back. we're just having a look around to see if there's anything else that's interesting. Just a couple of charging wildebeest comments on a question from Ants. And I can't remember exactly what you said, but you had said something about, what do I think the different species are discussing at the waterhole? Can you imagine? I think the Egyptian geese are just really angry and upset all the time and cannot understand why everybody is invading their space, because obviously they claim ownership of anything near and around the water. The elephants, I don't know, constant bickering about who gets to drink from the pipe when they can find it, all the fresh water comes from. I think you could go on and on and on and be quite comical. A canine girl, you're wondering, the really large horns on antelopes, it helps protect them, but does it hinder them when running through the bush from predators? I can see why you would say something like that. So animals that have got long horns, so for example like Kudu, because they're right here, what's really interesting is, yes, they prefer to live in denser vegetated areas, right? So, you know, their whole life they've had training on how not to get entangled in the bushes. But when they run, they tilt their heads up, so their noses go up, which means that their horns then almost lie flat against their back. Not quite, but you get what I mean. And so that allows them to sort of dodge and navigate through the vegetation without getting stuck. So I'm sure at some point they could get entangled with it, absolutely. But you'll find that with Kudu, just because we're talking about them, that more of the bulls get entangled with one another and, you know, have their horns locked in place, and quite often will end up dying like that, rather than necessarily getting entangled in trees. Impala do the same thing as well when you watch them darting through the vegetation, but they're pretty good at navigating it. And then Soul Shatter, you said the zebras discuss how they're going to kick each other and if they don't get some personal space while they're drinking. Absolutely. It's probably one of my favorite things to do is watch zebras drink around a waterhole, and especially a small one. There's always entertainment. When I was just in Botswana, it was so funny watching the zebras around the pump pans and Khadi salt pans especially. Oh my goodness. Firstly, there were just so many zebras that you couldn't make out the front end from the back end. Yeah, so it was just chaos. It made for great photography though. But today, everyone seems content with one another's presence. We haven't actually seen any interactions where the elephants have chased anyone away. The zebras are just behaving in the corner. The kudu are normally quite nervous and cautious. Moonbeam, you're wondering what is the white stuff in the background. So if I'm not mistaken, it's calcrete. So it's just a type of a rock really that's very high in calcium. We see it. We also see a lot of it at Okukuyo, which is another one of the cameras in Namibia, in Etosha National Park. So that's why the termite mounds also look white. Termite mounds can be any color. It just depends on the type of soil that they use to build their homes. And then another question from you is, what is the easiest way to remember what animal is which? Just practice, really. I suppose if you have a field guide, especially one of African mammals, that would help. And then kind of go from there. I mean, so we always talk about identifying features as the most important thing, and in order to be able to do this, you need to understand what the identifying features are of an animal. So I'm going to use myself as an example, right? I've got blonde hair, sometimes, depending if I've been to the hairdresser or not recently. I've got blue eyes. I've got tattoos. These are all identifying features. You could even say I'm quite loud, but in terms of physical characteristics. So zebra, I think, probably one of the easiest animals to identify because they've got black and white stripes. They kind of look like horses. Right, so you just have to understand the identifying features. Maybe it's a different antelope, for an example. Maybe it's something like a common duiker, and now you're like, okay, I know it's an antelope, but what is it? And you can say it's small. It has these big preorbital glands. It's got these. If you can Google what a preorbital gland is, it's basically these little glands, but they are like almost looks like incisions just below their eyes and on either side of their face, essentially, like a ridge of your nose, almost. Think of it like that. And females have got a tuft of hair in between their ears. Like, these are all identifying features. So you'd need a book and then kind of just go from there. And then you just page and page and page, and you look at different pictures of different animals, and that's how you learn it. There's no real secret, unfortunately. And then once you have a basic understanding, the other thing is that certain animals occur in certain areas. For example, we're not going to see an okapi here at Madikwe, or we're very unlikely to see a tiger. So then you just learn what animals occur in that area. So that's kind of like the next step. But I hope that helps. But here we might get some zebra action. You can see one or two of them were kicking, but I don't think it was because of the other zebras. I think it's just the flies. You can see it with all the tails swishing. And there you go. You see that big stamp. That's not aggression towards another animal. That's just there's something biting me in a place that I can't get. So I'm going to kick out of frustration, and hopefully that will help and get rid of the fly or whatever it might be that's biting them. everything seems to just be taking it really easy today. Animals slowly coming down to drink and then eventually venturing off. This is where it becomes quite tricky for animals, and sadly the drier and drier it gets, we're going to see this more frequently. But look at the impala on the right hand side of the screen. Now there's not much water here at all. You can see the darker parts of the clay are wetter. These lighter bits have dried up and are quite hard. It needs to be very careful and think wisely about where it's going to go and drink, because if it does step too far to the left, it's going to find itself in a lot of trouble. It's going to get sucked into that mud, and getting out of it is another story. And during the dry seasons around waterholes, we do see a lot of animals that get stuck. A lot of the smaller animals, and then of course even something as big as an elephant, especially the younger elephants, can find themselves in a bit of trouble, as you'll see. So I can't understand why they're choosing to drink here rather than just off to the left, where you can see the ground is much harder and there's actual water there. Bizarre. But let's just see how far these zebra are going to go in. You can see them sinking, not too bad just yet though, and this is normally okay, but it's once they sink down in their bellies are basically touching the mud that they're going to struggle. Kind of like a car, right? When you're driving around, you go through mud, but unfortunately there's a big rut and the car is now sitting on the axle. And then you're not going anywhere, and you're stuck and you're going to need to be pulled out. But I'm just quite curious to see how deep it is and how far these zebras are willing to go. There's a little bit of water that you can see there, but that's not much. Why risk it? Unless they know something that I don't know. Maybe there's a crocodile lying just below the surface of the water. Oh, look at this compromising position. Impala, I wouldn't think about going too much deeper. Yeah, that's a wise decision. I do sometimes question the logic behind animals. I mean, you've even seen elephants moving through here, and you watch and you see how deep they sink. But luckily for elephants, they've got really big, wide feet, which definitely helps. Canine girl, you're wondering what animal species would you say reflects me and my personality? Oh my gosh, I don't know. Probably a fork-tailed drongo. No, I don't know. I actually have no idea. I think me and all my multiple personalities, I could be a little bit of everything. I don't know, Canine girl, why don't you tell me what you think? I am quite cheeky and impatient, like a zebra, so I definitely have some of those qualities. And I don't even know. I have no idea. Sass, a baby elephant that also thinks, I don't know. Maybe you can all tell me, for those of you that have got to know me over the years, what animal or animals you think are a true reflection of who I am. I am an introverted extrovert though. It's bizarre. I'm very happy to spend lots of time on my own, but then I also love being around people. Probably a lioness too. Feisty, can be pretty feisty and stuck in my ways. No, maybe not so much stubborn, but as in I'll hold my ground like a lioness would to, if an intruding male were to come around, how they kind of all get together. I'm very much like that. I'm normally that person in the friend group. If somebody is being picked on, I'm the one that comes in and puts an end to it. And even if I don't know you, if I just see that you're being treated unfairly, I'll normally step in. But don't tell everybody my bark is, I'm all bark and no bite. And some more elephants coming around soon. Let me have a look. Let's check the YouTube chat. See if anybody has commented. Taking care of business, you said. Have I ever got my boots stuck in the mud? Oh my goodness. Taking care of business, you should go and watch. There's compilation videos involving me in mud, and they don't ever end very well for me. There's one where I fell face first into the mud in Kenya. That was spectacular. That was live as well. That whole moment was captured for everyone to see. That was funny. And then the last time I got properly stuck in the mud was in Sri Lanka. Must have been, I think it was early 2019 actually. We got stuck. We were just pushing the limits and trying to go to another area. But anyways, we got stuck. And I jumped out of the vehicle because obviously I'm going to help try and get it unstuck. And where I jumped out of the vehicle, I just sank to my knees and one of my shoes came off. I did manage to get it out though. That was fun. Case thought it was hilarious. Moonbeam Smith, you said that I have basically just a touch of dwarf mongoose. I'm a little bit skittish, but vicious when I need to be, and fast when I need to be. Very funny. And then taking care of business, you said a cheetah. My goodness, maybe I used to be fast back in the day. Now not so much. Definitely not fit like I used to be when I was in high school. Have started playing paddle though. That's fun. It's basically going to be a cult now in Hoedspruit, which is fine. I'm all for that. So that's where you can normally find me now. I don't go out very much anymore, ever. I stay at home. I go for lots of walks. I see my friends at their houses, and then we do park run on Saturdays, and then I'm now at the paddle courts in Hoedspruit. That's typically where you can find me. Come on, Ellies, come and have a mud bath. I don't know if it's warm enough and they feel like they're necessarily going to have one, but we'll keep an eye on the small group of elephants, these youngsters. Look how they're all colliding with one another. They better be careful. I think we might have lost Towel Lodge. We'll see if it comes back. Nope. Sadly, not. So everybody, our technical wizards will of course get on that. Oh my goodness. So now we're at Okukuyo in Namibia, where there's nothing. Where's the springbuck? Where are you? Oh, but look, there's greenery around the water's edge. Can we zoom in? Can we have a look and see what these plants are? Just down below the camera. I'm quite curious now. Normally we see lots of springbuck and elephants and giraffe and hemsbok and all sorts of things in between. But because it's been rainy season, these animals could have also moved off now to areas that are more lush with vegetation. Oh, sorry everybody, it seems like all our cameras are frozen at the moment, so we'll just have to bear with us. Okay, everybody, we seem to have things up and running again. Let's go back to South Africa. We're going to go check out Rosy's pan and do a bit of birding. Here we are. So we're now in Olifants West Game Reserve, and there's not much happening just yet at Rosy's pan, but I absolutely love this waterhole because of all the birds that come down to have a drink, and the sun is trying to poke its head out. So obviously partly cloudy, so every now and then we get the breaks through the clouds, and then it warms up quite a bit. But so don't let this overcast sort of doom and gloomy weather fool you. It's definitely warm in the low veld. It's a little swallow of some kind that just dipped down to have a sip of water. Now we wait. I think, here we go. I can't tell you what swallow it is, but there are plenty of barn swallows around at the moment. They seem to be the most prominent one, but let me not even call it that. Let's have a look on the right-hand side between the rock and the log. It's my favorite birding spot. We'll start there and see if anything comes down to have a drink, and then if not, we'll scan around the water's edge. A couple of ripples on the surface of the water. That could be from terrapins, fish, even frogs. Still quiet. I don't know if I can hear anything on this camera. I'm not sure. We'll just check with Kudu, who is directing, to just turn the ambient sound up a little bit, because that is the only way that I can tell whether a bird party is getting closer. If we listen out for lots of those lots of chirps. And Darcy Miller, you said the reflection of the water is beautiful. It is, especially on days like today where there's not much wind, although it's picking up a little bit, but not too badly. I hope we're going to get some action at Rosy's pan. This is normally the saving grace. Gosh, not even a sparrow, nothing. Okay, let's have a scan around the edge of the water. Maybe Rosy's pan is just not where it's happening today. Okay, let's go back to Towel. It seems as though the camera is back up and running. There you go, looking a little bit quieter than it was earlier. Even the heron is now taking the opportunity to just focus on a bit of feather maintenance, as they always do. There's a crocodile. There's 2 crocodiles. You see them? There's one just to the left of the heron and between the grassy channel, and then there's another one in the murky waters just above it, moving to the left-hand corner of the screen now. See, they are here. They're just really well hidden. I'm not sure what this crocodile is trying to do. Using its tail like it's trying to push itself forward, but where are you trying to go? You're going to bury yourself underneath the grass. Annabelle, you've asked, how will an unusually dry winter affect next year's January-February rainy season in the Greater Kruger? Well, we typically have really dry winters. So what we have had is unusually wet winters over the last couple of years. Like normally we don't see a drop of rain from, let's be safe, let's call it May until October, November. Sometimes it comes early. Quite often in August we get a sprinkle, but it really just depends. For the most part, May, June, July and August are very dry. And it really is beautiful. We're so lucky in the low-veld to have winters like this, but I haven't experienced a proper low-veld winter for a very long time. I think this camera has... No, it's not frozen because the water's still moving. It's just that stalk, yellow-billed stalk that's standing so still. That is bizarre. You can see the crocodile moving there. That was really weird. I don't know what happened because the bird wasn't moving, but there was a crocodile swimming below the screen. The water was still moving around. Have no idea what happened there. Anyway, so what having a dry winter is normal, and we do need to have some kind of a drought. We've had so many years of really good rain in the Greater Kruger area, which is wonderful. But with drought, you know, it brings, I don't know, it kind of weeds out all the weaker genes that probably shouldn't, you know, still be around. Of course, they're naturally going to get predated on, but droughts are good. So I just don't know how bad it's going to be because we've had some horrific ones. So I suppose only time is going to tell. I just checked the weather app and then I was exploring more of South Africa, and it looks like there's a big, like a cell that's developing off the southwest coast of South Africa, so around the Western Cape, the Cape Town region, which we could potentially this side get the tail end of, but I suppose we'll just have to wait and see how severe that's going to be. Off we go, giraffe. And in case you're wondering, we're in Kenya now. We're at Oldonyo. I think for the animals, though, they'll be lucky in terms of a drought for this year, especially the Greater Kruger, because the dams are filled with water. They were the fullest I've ever seen them in like the last 2 years. So I don't think that there's going to be a shortage of water necessarily, but food is a big problem, right? That's going to be the tricky thing. Don't look at Kenya. Kenya has had unusually extreme rains. Everything is looking so lovely and lush. And how crazy was that sighting? When was it? Was it last week or the week before? Where that rather large elephant bull here at Oldonyo just wandered up towards a giraffe and pretty much had a go at it and stabbed it with one of its tusks. It was insane to see. So it just goes to show how a situation can go from being really calm and peaceful to, you know, changing in a blink of an eye. Very sad for that giraffe, but I don't think it did anything wrong necessarily. It was just the elephant maybe having a bad day, took its frustrations out on the next best thing, which happened to be that giraffe. It was crazy. It's just unbelievable what these cameras can capture. And honestly, if it wasn't for this camera and us seeing that, I reckon there would have been a lot of speculation around people saying that perhaps that giraffe would have been speared. So I wonder how often, I don't think it's particularly high, elephants around a waterhole become quite possessive and aggressive, and injuries like that happen to giraffe and other animals. Petite Magaga, and you've said it's keeping a lookout for the grumpy elephant bull. Now, everybody has to watch their 6 o'clock when they take a drink of water. It's when they're, most vulnerable, especially so with giraffe. And also because they're so tall, it's a lot more dramatic, when they lift their heads up and look around. When we see something like an impala doing it, it's, not as jarring. It's quite easy for them to just lift their head up. But always good to just keep an eye out. And I'm sure word is spread amongst the giraffe and other animals that keep an eye out for that particular individual. I don't know, I obviously didn't see it live, but for those of you that watch the show regularly, were you able to identify which elephant it was? I saw it was one of the big tuskers, but I don't know if it was one of the named tuskers. But if you have any of this information and you can share it with me, that would be great. Darkman Lover, you particularly enjoy watching giraffe drink water. We see it so often at Old Daniel. We're so spoiled. Most of the time, if you go on a safari, the chances of you seeing a giraffe drinking water are slim to none. It's not that they don't drink water. If there's water available, they'll drink every single day. But they can go a short period of time without water. I wouldn't call them water-dependent animals. But at this particular waterhole, we see it. Oh man, you just watch all day. I wonder if anyone has actually done a tally from over a certain period of time how many giraffe come and drink. But there'll be water everywhere now in this area. Lots of natural pans sort of filled up. It just hasn't stopped raining. You can see it's raining in the background on the right-hand side of the screen. Those clouds right at the back. It's kind of a haze. That's all rain. Lady Macbeth, said that you don't think the giraffe are keen on getting their feet wet. Funny because there's some that don't mind putting their entire hooves into the water, and then, like you say, others that just literally just the tips go in. And then I've also seen it where giraffe is standing in the middle of that waterhole having a drink. You also hear the oxpeckers, quite a few other little birds too, but none that are really gathering around the water's edge. Lots of dragonflies today, and butterflies. You can see lots of them here too. I'm also keeping an eye out for the agama, a small reptile that runs around here. And then, Victor, you're wondering, how often are man-made waterholes topped up? That's a difficult one to answer because everywhere will be different. I don't think that they're going to be pumping a lot of water into this pan at this time of the year because of all the rain. There's pretty much rain every single day in this area, so that's going to be filling this pan up nicely. And then during dry season, I'm pretty sure they just have to keep topping it up all the time. We watch the water levels drop quite a bit, but when you see how many animals on a daily basis come and drink from this this man-made pan, yeah, it's difficult. Even when we're at Jamala in Madikwe, you can see when the pump is either not working, or there's just that many animals that are coming through, combined with the heat. And, evaporation, animals drinking the water, some of it naturally seeping back into the earth. It can obviously disappear at various rates depending on a bunch of circumstances. So, yeah, it's really difficult to tell. This fella has not stopped having a drink. Very thirsty giraffe. Mandy, you wondering if oxpeckers are the only birds that land on giraffe? For the most part, yes. However, I have also seen lilac-breasted rollers, especially in East Africa, using various animals. I've seen them on giraffe, I've seen them on elephants, I've seen them on zebra and buffalo, where they'll use them as a perch. Just slightly different environment. Maybe not so much here in this, Amboseli, Tsavo region, because it is quite wooded. There's lots of trees and things around. But when you move into areas where it's open grassland, and when you have birds that will perch, scout for food, and then, swoop down and grab something, it's difficult because in open grassland, there's not always that many trees. Think of the Masai Mara and all the pictures and postcards that I'm sure you have all seen. It makes it a little bit tricky for, say, something like a lilac-breasted roller. How does it hunt if there isn't anything around? Maybe it's lucky and there's a tree that once was there and it's now just a stump, but they will exploit other animals. So by just sitting on the back of a zebra, doing the same thing, zebra's walking around, it's not, removing any parasites or feeding on the zebra at all, just simply using it as a post. So yeah, just trying to think what else I see. We see cattle egrets are another good example of that. They like to sit on buffalo and elephants as they walk around too. And those birds will also gather in and amongst and around the feet of the elephants or large mammal species and catch any insects that are being disturbed in the grass. And when they're not eating, they want to stay with the group of animals that's going to help provide them with food. Why not just catch a ride instead of walking? I mean, it's really clever. So there are a bunch of different birds that do it. I mean, in Sri Lanka, I had some amazing sightings of the Indian pond herons and the water buffalo in Sri Lanka. They literally submerge themselves to the point where you can just about only see their nostrils. But you'll see that the Indian pond herons will sit on the backs of these water buffalo and then, fish right out in the middle of the water. I've seen herons doing it, standing on hippos, doing exactly the same thing. So there are lots of other birds that will sit on mammals, but for very different reasons than the oxpeckers. Okay, thank you, Old Daniel, for the giraffe sighting. So we're going to head to Mabula now and watch an elephant. Well, we're really watching an elephant. This bull has come nice and close. A big fella. Just investigating around. Never did I think a small wooden pole like that could conceal an elephant. Oh, there goes a little gecko. A little diurnal dwarf gecko of sorts. They're kind of regular visitors on poles, on bark of trees. Sure, look at this. This is amazing. Look at all the crinkles that he has in his forehead and just at the base of the trunk. That's amazing to see. What are you munching on there? He's just moving around. I'm sure you could all see that white stuff that he has in the corner of his eye. So what's interesting about elephants is that they don't have tear ducts. So they have got a little a mucus gland, though. This is a secretion. We typically just refer to it as sebum. And that's important for elephants because it will help lubricate the eye. There's also been suggested that it has got some kind of like antibacterial, microbial properties to it too. This is amazing. Look how close it is. Look how, you can just see even the ears. They're not smooth and perfect. They've got tiny little jagged edges and tiny little holes in them. Eligi, you said you could reach out and touch him, right? It's tempting, right? You're so close, and he's obviously being, well, compliant by standing around here, giving us an opportunity to really have a closer look at him. You also see all the mud that's still stuck in and around his ears. You see it right at the back of his ears too. And you said you could smell him. What does he smell like? Earth. It's like going after one particular type of tree. I can't exactly see what it is. What is this thing here? I have absolutely no idea what he's eating. Gosh, I love that sound of the elephants flapping their ears and also being able to hear him chew. Perhaps he can hear us. Every now and then he does go quite quiet. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. I imagine if you, or maybe some of you are watching this, with a big 70-inch TV, how insane this would be. Wow. That's as close as you're going to get. There's its trunk. You can see all the little hairs around its the tip of the trunk. You can see lots and lots of hairs around its sort of mouth and the lower lip. They just can't help themselves. They've got to smell everything and touch everything. Tactile communication for elephants is really important. And there's just so many of you commenting as to how beautiful this actually is. Gosh, you can even see the grooves on the tusk. Wow, look at that. All the bark that's still left over from breaking branches, rubbing up against trees. You can even see his toes. Wrinkles everywhere. And you can see how deep those wrinkles are. So hopefully for those of you that, you know, aren't fortunate enough to spend a lot of time with elephants, you can just see how important it is for them to have all this extra surface area and how the mud can get wedged in between these grooves and keep them nice and cool. They'll stay there for long periods of time. Well, there we go. Taking care of business. I basically just answered your question about, you've mentioned wrinkling causes more surface area and maybe it cools or regulates heat like that. Absolutely, but with them having these wrinkles, and obviously the main way that elephants will keep themselves cool, so not just by flapping their ears, but by tossing water over themselves. And then, of course, the mud helps because the mud gets stuck and wedged into all these little grooves. And because there's no direct sunlight on it, it stays moist for a lot longer, which then means that the elephant stays cooler for longer. So yes, you're 100% correct. And Darcy Miller, you've said that seeing those tusks so closely, it's really amazing. Yeah, it is. They are such interesting things, tusks. I've seen lots of tusks in my life. Gosh, the more time you spend in the bush, you find broken bits of ivory all over the show. Obviously, we leave it in the bush. If it's small pieces, every time I find it, I've just kind of moved it underneath a bush or something along those lines. If it's an exceptionally big piece, then you normally have to notify the authorities, the local authorities, whoever that might be, and they'll normally come and remove it and, safeguard it. You obviously don't want big bits of ivory lying out and about in the bush, but smaller pieces, because the elephant tusks, they chip quite often. I mean, you've seen it all the time. It's not uncommon to see an elephant with a chipped tusk. And now he's gone. Well, he's still there, but just out of view. That was a really awesome, intimate experience with that elephant bull. It was so just peaceful and calm too. Well, that was really nice. Mabula every now and then presents us with bits of gold. And this was definitely one of those moments for me. We're going to go back to a Tau Lodge now and see what else is happening there. Hello, Impala. Now, how did you get there? Did you jump? You must have jumped. Oh, I suppose you could have walked. He's kind of standing there now, not doing much at all. You see where all the water lilies were. Those leaves have basically just shriveled up to almost nothing now. Well, at least the birds have come back. Sorry everybody, towel froze again, so we're at Rosy's pan. And we're looking at a grey go-away bird and also a helmeted guinea fowl that's just hiding behind the tree. Not too sure of whether it's going to come down and have a drink or not. Seems like quite a nervous Nelly, this bird. And normally where there's one guinea fowl, there's more. I'm just looking at that guinea fowl. Is it missing most of its foot, or did I just imagine it? I don't know if you saw that. Its left foot. No, its toes are there. Sorry, I had a moment where I thought, oh my goodness, it's missing its toes, which actually wouldn't be an uncommon thing to see. You see birds quite often missing feet. You can see the go-away birds, not sure what's in the water. Just go and have a drink. Come on, just do it. What are you looking for? Are you admiring your reflection? Oh, there we go. Finally having a drink now. Oh, no, something gave it a fright. Must be quite daunting though, coming down to the water's edge all by yourself. As a guinea fowl, I don't think is really taking notice to what's going on. But they're such beautiful birds. Also a safari favorite amongst visitors. I mean, who wouldn't want to see a bird with a blue head and white polka dots covering its body? A little bit of a hop, skip and a jump. Oh, hello Kudu. It's nice of you. No wonder the guinea fowl was getting out of the way. Also cautiously making its approach, just having a quick scan around. Crazy how it just emerged from almost out of nowhere. Not quite as big as that first Kudu bull we saw at Tower Lodge. A little bit, well, I think it was at the beginning of the show. And of course, oxpeckers in tow with the Kudu. Oh, this is as close as you can get to watching a kudu drink. Beautiful, having a nice long drink. And then Lucy, you were wondering if there are any crocodiles at Rosy's pad. There absolutely could be. For the most part, I don't think I haven't seen crocodiles inhabiting this waterhole. But again, coming now into an extremely dry time, you might find that they'll start moving a little bit more, water sources start to dry up, and this would make a perfect spot. I've seen crocodiles in the strangest of strange places that you wouldn't normally think they could live there, but they do. So it's just always good to be careful. And Sue said you like his curly head spears. Yes, we will not be calling them horns anymore. That's so last year. We're done with that. Head spears. I like that. Thank you very much. I'm now backing away. I can even see the oxpeckers are right in between his legs, getting all those ticks. And now disappearing back into the tree line. And there we go, there's the sun trying to come out. And the guinea fowl that is hobbling. It has got a bit of a sore foot. What has happened to you? It's obviously unusual to see a guinea fowl on its own. When we do see guinea fowl on their own, quite often it's because one of the adults is incubating the eggs. But for the most part, they've all had their eggs already, and the youngsters have even joined back up with the bigger groups of guinea fowl. So I'm not sure if this one's just unable to keep up with the flock, and that's why it's on its own. It's clearly got an injury of some kind. I can't see the extent of the injury, and I have no idea what would have caused the injury to its foot. But it's not necessarily something that's life-threatening. I'm sure it will be okay. It's just the, being on your own part is a bit scary. As you can see, still looking around, even looking up for aerial predators. And you volunteered to make it a leg cast. Absolutely, if you can catch it, you can make it. But even though it's hobbling, they're fast. They're so fast. So good luck. I'll just sit and watch. I'll narrate as you run around chasing down the guinea fowl. But sadly, we don't have much time left. It's been a wonderful show. I thoroughly enjoyed watching the vultures scavenge about, and I hope you all did too. I'll be on again tomorrow. I'll be on until Friday. So have a wonderful week ahead, and I'll see you soon.